the beginning of the 1900s, women in many states did not have the right to vote. This time was filled with sexism and discrimination against women. Many women were starting to fight back against the rules set by society. Alice Paul was a suffrage that worked with Lucy Burns to start this parade. Women started to ask for the rights to vote at the beginning of the 1840s. This fight had taken many turns and many different groups had different ways of fighting. People had tried everything but still could not get the right to vote for women. Women started to realize they needed to be more upfront and rowdy about how they were asking for it. Women started returning from Great Britain where they were fighting and gaining much support and recognition, with these women coming back and bringing new ideas that were seeming to work. The women's suffrage processions was a parade that started a new way of protesting. Sexism in the 1900s. Women were expected to be polite housewives that would do as they were told. Some men didn't like the changes that were happening and started to push back. Some women were against the suffrages. They were happy with the way things were done. The article, Women's Suffrage in the Progressive Era, by the Library of Congress states, "Not all women believed in equality for the sexes. Women who upheld traditional gender roles argued that politics were improper for women. Some even insisted that voting might cause women to grow beards. The challenges to traditional gender roles represented the struggle for political, economic, and social equalities was all threatening to some women as it was to most. Fighting for their rights in the 1900s. Many groups were starting to form. They all had different roles and strategies in the fight. Some men supported the idea of change, but many were scared or against it. Women would write or try to change something, but a lot of the time it was small events, and some were not even public. The fight started close to the 1840s in New York. Women were starting to get mad that their strategies were not working. Alice Paul and the National American Women's Suffrage Association. When Alice Paul and Lucy Burns got back from Great Britain, where they met, they joined the group in 1912. They learned how women were fighting, but Paul wanted to do more. Alice Paul and Lucy Burns left the group and created their own group, National Women's Party. In the article, Alice Paul and the Women's History Museum, it states, NAWSA primarily focused on state-by-state campaigns. Paul preferred to lobby Congress for a constitutional amendment. Such differences led Paul and others to split with NAWSA and form the National Women's Party. The start of a new way. Alice Paul was still working with the NAWSA when the parade was in works. She was working on retiring from the group and starting the NWP. The women that were willing to try this upfront way of protesting were helping to pass out flyers and deciding the dates. March 3, 1913, which was the day before President Woodrow Wilson's inauguration. The posters and handouts had images of women wearing the suffrage colors, purple, white, yellow, on a white horse.
President Woodrow Wilson's inauguration, over 5,000 women paraded down Pennsylvania Avenue toward the White House in a first-of-its-kind demonstration for the right to vote. As thousands watched, some of the women were insulted and attacked by a mob, resulting in over 200 injuries and the call for the U.S. Army cavalry to subdue the crowd. American History TV attended a centennial celebration of the event.
The parade. On the day of the parade, people surrounded the streets waiting for women and men to start marching. There were so many people there because of Woodrow Wilson's inauguration that the parade gathered many people. Some people were climbing in trees to get a better view. Men were drunk and wanting to stop the parade at any cost. Men were scared of the changes that were following these protests. In the text, 1913's Women's Suffrage Processions from the National Park Services says the protest procession ended an hour or so later than planned, with dramatic tableau on the steps of the Treasury building. The next day, headlines in the newspaper around the country proclaimed the drama of the women's suffrage processions. The cover of the march was often more prominent on the front pages of the news than Woodrow Wilson's inauguration. The riot. During the parade, many people that didn't support the movement showed up to stop the parade. They wanted to do this so they wouldn't succeed in their task of gaining more publicity and support from the crowds and the people watching from home. But this ended up doing the opposite. The suffragists still made it to the White House, but over 100 women were hospitalized because of the abuse they endured from the onlookers. The police that were there to protect the women did little to stop the attacks or assist the women. The immediate effects of the parade. Even if the intentions of the riot was to stop the parade, it actually helped. The suffragists gained support through the compassion they gained because of the women who got hurt. After the day of the parade, the headlines were all about the parade and not about Woodrow Wilson's inauguration. They had succeeded in one way. They had finally gained the support and respect they needed to light a fire under the fight. In the article, 1913, Women's Suffrage Proceedings by the National Park Services quotes, "The next day, headlines in newspapers around the country proclaimed the drama of the women's suffrage proceedings. The coverage of the march was often more prominent on the front pages than news of Woodrow Wilson's inauguration." The 19th Amendment, approved by Congress June 4, 1919, and ratified on August 18, 1920, granted the right to vote to all American women. After the 19th Amendment was ratified, many women were celebrating this giant step towards equality between all the sexes. The women that marched and got hurt in the parade finally got what they were marching for. While it took another 7 years for the 19th Amendment to be ratified on August 18, 1920, the women who marched on this day in history accomplished their goal of regenerating the suffrage movement, quoted by Obama White House. Even though many women got the right to vote during the 19th Amendment, women are still using the protest strategies today. They are fighting for the right to a safe abortion in the United States because Roe v. Wade was overturned. Many of the same protest strategies were used during this time and helped women gain the right to a safe abortion.
Want to say something to the Supreme Court, you basically have to come to their front door.
You don't care if people die. Pro-life is alive. You don't care if people die.
It's not like this is a surprise, but it still really hurts to see it like laid out in black and white that this is going to happen.
I thought we had settled this. I thought this matter had been settled, and that we could continue to enjoy reproductive freedom, that we wouldn't have to be doing this again.